A couple of weeks back, I did my Wuthering Waves 2.0 Rinascita review. And as any Rinascita 2.0 review should do, I had a section in there regarding flying. Flying is a really good addition to this game. It's really good. However, in that section of the video, I did have some reservations about what I see to be a common request. And that's for flying to become a permanent addition to the game, and for it to be allowed from basically any location. Well, I'm here to say that as much as I do like flying in this game, I don't really subscribe to that idea. To preface this short take though, here's what I said in that video. Now I have to say, when it comes to such a feature, I'm very cautious about its implementation. This is an open world game after all, and it's very possible to trivialize the open world with exploration mechanics that let you bypass traditional elements of exploration. The good thing though is that here in Rinascita, flying is limited to some degree. Plus, while there are many vertical interest points, the land below is riddled with little nooks and crannies and interest points that kind of force you to get on your feet anyway, even if you fly there. And for that reason, flying around Rinascita doesn't feel extremely game-breaking. That said, depending on the regional topography, it could be pretty game-breaking to have this 100% of the time. I know that there are some people who are screaming for flying to become a permanent thing that can be done from any region and from any point, but I'm not 100% with that idea. And yeah, I know there's probably 1,000 people slapping their keyboard after hearing that, but I'm gonna do a separate short take on that topic altogether. It won't be a long video, just a small one explaining my viewpoint. That said, flying is nice, and I really do enjoy it here. Now, I'm going to try to keep this short take short, but before I go deeper into my thoughts here, I just want to say, I get it. No, I really do get it, I understand. Flying is an incredible feature. It's very liberating, it's extremely expedient, and not only that, but it's simply breathtaking to be honest. Just seeing the landscape as you fly over it, and yeah, I get it. But I don't need it every region all the time unconditionally. And I know there are people that are going to hate hearing that because what would it hurt, right? Yeah, I know. Too often in these gacha games, when a large part of the community requests a certain feature, the other half of the community opposes it with no better reason than simply, I don't want it, so it shouldn't be in the game. Bro, it's the most brain-dead, infuriating take ever. But this is not the case here. In flying's case, I love it. It's nothing to do with me not liking it, so me believing no one else should have access to it. No, it's just honest good faith reasoning based on map planning, feature planning, and topographic variation. Flying works in Rinascita because the region was literally built with flying in mind. The strategic launch points serve as a means to get you in the air to expedite your travels, but the majority of interest points are still on the ground. If you do fly over any interest point, then you just miss out, but you'll eventually have to land later if you want everything in the region. So flying in Rinascita isn't really game breaking. The environments above and below are meant to be explored at your leisure. You can swoop down and check out that interesting thing below, or you can keep flying over it and head to that thing you see in the horizon. What happens though in a future region where the environment is the interest point? In many lush and expansive open world games that seek to create a diverse yet unified world, it's not uncommon for this diversity to show itself in topographic variance and landform differences. This is especially true in games where different nations and cultures exist. In fact, that goes beyond just games and applies to several forms of fictional entertainment media, from books to comics, live action series, animated series, movies, anime, you name it. The topographies of regions are often used to give fictional nations and cultures further differentiation from one another. And with our real-world experiences as humans on Earth, a world with incredible topographic variance and landform differences, We can identify with this even in a fantastic setting, the crafty and cunning forest culture and civilization, the stoic and proud mountain tribe. Topography as an extension of cultural or national identity is a common theme, and it's something I honestly give Genshin a lot of credit for. Credit where it's due, that game does a great job on topographic and landform variations, as well as relating these things to different cultures and regions. A nation of grassy plains, a nation of rocky cliffs and spires, a frigid mountain, a nation of islands, a dual-cultured nation separated by jungles and deserts, seas, waterfalls, you get the point. In the distance, there's even hints of a volcano coming soon. And all these features are region exclusive to help enforce the idea that the nations of that world are indeed different nations. We're only in the second cultural region of Wuthering Waves, and I believe that flying fits it well. But as a game that also seems to be going the route of regional cultures, I wouldn't be surprised to see it also go the route of regional topography. They just go hand in hand. But while traversing Rinascita by either land or air feels incredible, there's one thing about Rinascita that I feel is no different than Huanglong, and that's environmental interactions or hazards. And this is what I meant a couple of minutes ago when I said, what happens in a future region where the environment is the interest point? Imagine future Solaris 3 cultures or civilizations based on arid deserts. We all know the epic size and nature of some tacit discords in this game. Imagine hills of sand with monstrous sandworms lunging out of the dunes, and deep canyons that force you to travel down the crevices because the cliffs are just too high and too far apart to clear. Now imagine you could just fly over all that. Imagine steamy geysers and eruptions of lava shaping the actual landscape that one must traverse. Trails of lava and magma forcing you to reroute down narrow strips of solid ground as you get into fights which force you to carefully and masterfully restrict your movement to avoid stepping over into a fiery death. Now, imagine you can just fly over all that. Rinascita, for all its beauty and glory, isn't itself much of an environmentally interactive region. To the extent that it is, it has to do with the water and the air, but in those cases it's mostly for traveling purposes. Kuro is cooking something fierce with this game though, and I believe that if they ever do go down the route of environments themselves having some degree of hostility, then they'll do an insanely good job with it. They already toyed with it a little bit in Mount Firmament with things like ice sliding, at least as far as topographic interaction goes. I would love to see how Kuro Games does different environments, and I'd love to see how they make us interact. And this is why Flight on Demand isn't a totally appealing ideal to me. It didn't feel like it trivialized much in Rinascita, but being on the ground isn't what Rinascita is based on, so that checks out. If Kuro Games is to fully embrace creative licensing for an open world here though, then that may include some groundwork. Literally groundwork. Unconditional, uninhibited flight would remove some creative opportunities for topographical interaction. Whether it's dodging sandworms or dancing around lava, it's possible to make being on your feet itself an integral part of the gameplay. It sounds boring compared to flight, but that's only from the lens of using your feet as a mode of traversing. When it turns into a watch your step or die situation to get all the way to those ruins across the dunes, you're now talking about something more than just traversal. I know what some may be thinking. Well, if you don't want to fly on the fly, just don't. And that kind of logic always sounds good on the surface, but it doesn't hold up well in my opinion. Elective hardship is just not interesting. If the game ever does present me with sandworms or lava trails, I don't want to fly over that, nor even have the option. Challenge me, make me walk over that. That's why you're a game. It reminds me of the earlier days of Genshin, When some players were saying they wanted a harder game and in-game modes, and other players would respond, if you want a harder game, then just remove your artifacts and gear. No, I'm playing the game to be challenged. At the point I'm avoiding the game's features to give myself a challenge, it's lost. And similarly, if they ever have future regions where the grounded game is where the challenge itself is, I don't want to be grounded by my own choice, while knowing in the back of my mind I'm avoiding the flight feature that could allow me to bypass it. And that's what it comes down to. I just don't want there to ever be a time in this game which has me avoiding its features, flying in this case, to make my own challenge. It works in Rinascita because the topography and environments aren't what challenges the players as much as just the individual interest points themselves. That's why I personally love flying in Rinascita as well. I don't dislike flying at all. I freaking love it as it is. I'm just saying it's good for the region it's in. Future regions could have topographies or environments that make unconditional flight an uninteresting mechanic compared to dealing with the environment on your feet. That's why I'm also making a clear distinction here to say unconditional flight. It's important to note I'm not necessarily advocating for flying to be region locked to Rinascita. I wouldn't mind it in future regions myself, but it would depend on their own landforms and topographies. It shouldn't be unconditional all the time from any place in every region, no matter the landform or topography. Just a case-by-case basis, carefully considering a region's interest points, land formations, and environmental interactivity, if any. That's why I felt like underwater swimming outside of just Fontaine in Genshin would have been acceptable. When considering the entire map, there's hardly any 2 points of land that can't be easily traversed to and fro on foot, even when water is between them. Underwater swimming outside of Fontaine wouldn't break the experience at all in that game, especially if they made sure to keep Fontaine as the only region with actual underwater interest points. Outside of Fontaine could make it conditional, such as needing a certain food item to give you underwater breathing, but the point is, I don't necessarily think that a regional mechanic spreading beyond its region is a bad thing, if the world's built-in interactivity isn't affected by it. I'm not one to say flying outright trivializes the game, because it doesn't inherently. It was well done in its current iteration and deserves praise, because it totally is possible to trivialize a world with such a feature. But that's what I keep in mind for future regions as well. We don't know exactly what they're cooking next, and as a result, we can't be for sure how any current game feature, like flying, may clash with what future vision they have. It's well possible that flight goes directly against what they're planning next to be a ground level experience of footsies and tiptoeing, you know what I mean? Maybe for expediency, we'll be working with portals or something. Who knows? We did it once, remember? We just don't know yet, so I feel like it's a bit premature to say 100% that this is a feature we need or want everywhere and all the time. Kuro Games cooked this and we all enjoyed it, so let's have a little faith that this isn't the peak of their creativity, and let's give them the benefit of the doubt to further surprise us with more cool things. I believe they've earned at least that much.